Welcome back to another Volume 26 side story summary. As mentioned before, when Tappei writes a volume for ReZero, he includes special side stories with different retailers. For Volume 26, there was an Emilia side story at the Pleiades Watchtower, which I've covered, and also a Vincent side story, which I also have a summary for. The final side story is a Rem Side story, which does have a translation, translated by Paper Kaminari at Witchcott Translations. Again, a link for the official translation will be put in the description or top comment if you wish to read it for yourself instead of listening to a summary. The side story starts with Rem being locked away in the vollachian camp's prison. She tries to bend the iron bars but cannot. She knows that even if she could bend the bars, there was still a whole encampment of people around her. Would she even be able to escape with all of the enemies around her? Furthermore, she had two problems: her lower half, which wasn't responsive, and that girl, referring to Lewis, who was separated from her. By the way, Rem doesn't know Lewis's name, so she refers to her as that girl, so I'll be calling her Lewis to make it clearer. We see that Rem's legs are sluggish, and she isn't paralyzed, but she realizes that if she had a cane or something, she could actually walk. But she starts wondering if her legs will ever go back to normal. She, however, cuts off this line of thinking, not wanting to focus on negative things. Rem thinks about Subaru, stating that Subaru's words do not touch her heart. This is due to the witch's scent which lingers around him, which smells like blood and murder. How could you take someone seriously when they smell of death and then they come up to you and they say that they do not wish to harm you despite smelling so bad? Rem vocalized Subaru's full name, Natsuki Subaru, not knowing if Subaru or Natsuki was his first name or surname. Rem predicts that there are around 100 soldiers at the camp, however they aren't strong. However, Jamal, the man with the eye patch, was strong, and Rem doesn't even know if she could beat Jamal if her legs were back to normal. We see that Rem was defeated by Jamal and dragged alongside Lewis and Subaru. After that, since Rem lacked information and wouldn't talk, she was placed in a cage and separated from Lewis and Subaru. Rem worried for Lewis due to the head wound that Lewis had. Rem can actually tell that Subaru is in the camp due to his witch scent, which she can smell. Rem ponders about who she is. No one else knows her, so she can't confirm if Rem is her name. So she decided to put her name aside for now. Rem did think that with time and meeting with people that knew her, she would regain her memories back, but it didn't seem like that would happen as dramatic as she believed. Rem states that the name Rem has nothing to do with her, and that Subaru is a fiend. However, despite knowing that, when Rem thinks back to Subaru's actions in the field, in the forest, and just before they jumped into the river, her heart creaked. She just doesn't understand why. Rem still remembers Subaru's arms that was wrapped around her. She tries to explain this away by stating that since Subaru knew her, she put more importance on him. Regardless, Rem stands up and wonders where Subaru and Lewis are. We then get a time skip to Rem shouting out at the guards taking Subaru away. We see that Subaru is more wounded than Rem last saw him, and he has a new wound on his shoulder. Furthermore, the stench on him has actually increased. Subaru almost looks like a slave. Even Rem, who doesn't like Subaru, felt like the way he was treated was wrong. Rem knew that her relationship with the guards were very poor and wondered what would happen to them. Rem actually contemplates taking her life, thinking that death would be preferable to if she was to get violated by men at the camp. However, as she thought of death, Subaru's voice echoed in her head. So long as you're breathing, talking, and looking around with those eyes, then all's fine. Subaru's voice made her choose to live, but at the same time it angered Rem. Rem realizes that no matter how she chooses to confront herself, she has to deal with Subaru, as Subaru knows who she is. Rem mutters that maybe she should break the fingers in Subaru's right hand as she decides to confront the problems about herself when Subaru arrives. We get another time skip and see that Subaru didn't return to the camp, and we see that Lewis was given first aid for the wound on her head, and she was laying down on Rem's lap and Rem was consoling her. Rem then smells something off-putting, the smell of blood. All of a sudden, the guards screamed out in pain as they were killed one by one. Lewis is shocked by the screams. She woke up and started crying. Rem decided it was time to move and twisted off a bar of the cage and used it as a cane. As Rem made her escape with Lewis, they met with someone, a girl with dyed blonde hair who was tasked with recovering Rem. Rem tried to resist Holly's arm, but was easily overpowered. Holly then also grabbed Lewis and Rem and took them away. We see that Rem would then later meet with Subaru and finally understand why this was happening from Subaru's mouth. This is a reference to Arc 7 Chapter 12, so make sure you go check that out. The side story ends here. It's interesting and tells us quite a bit. It does seem like Rem does have some sort of emotions deep down regarding Subaru. I've seen people say that Rem still loves Subaru, but reading the side story, it feels like she has lingering emotions that she cannot rationalize. And also, Holly is actually really strong. She overpowered Rem, which is very interesting. It goes to show that the Shudrak people are pretty damn strong. Lewis is still, of course, the best girl. She started crying when she heard all of the screaming, so mentally Lewis is very young, and Lewis only deserves head pats. By the way, if you made it this far, I just want to tell you that if you've seen my April Fool's prank, the Petra IF, that is actually a fake story. It's not real. Tappei did not write it. It's a fan fiction created by Satella, so if you thought that was a real fan fiction, then April Fool's. But don't believe it's real. Regulus didn't want to take Felix away and make him his wife. Nothing like that. So it's just a April Fool's prank. So do not take it seriously. And I just wanted to put this here because so many people thought that that was actually a real IF story. As I said before, this year's IF story was actually ReZero Academy. So that's known as Vainglory IF. So again, I don't think anyone's going to translate it. I think there's a summary for that chapter. But this year was Vainglory IF, and Petra IF does not exist. Anyways, that will be it. And thank you for watching, and thank you to my channel members.